Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome. We're so glad to have you back again this week for another great podcast. I told you this second quarter, my goal was to find guests that you can keep that momentum that we've created in the first quarter of 2024. Because really, it's about not just the revenue you bring in your business, it's about the profit. I always talk about it's kind of that rainbow. You know, you don't want to get to the end of the rainbow and there's no profit there at the end of the rainbow. So that's what we're working on in the Small Business Answer Man podcast. And I think I've got another guest that's going to really help us today in that area, but I'm going to let him share with you. Tim, would you share with our listeners, what problem will you help them solve today?
I'm going to help them solve how to either install or optimize the recurring revenue component of their business. No matter what industry you're in, no matter what client you solve, I believe that the best businesses have recurring revenue built upon a solid relationship with the clients that we seek to solve. So we might solve one problem today, but that earns the right for us to solve the problems for them into the future.
Oh, I'm going to like this conversation because I like those models of recurring revenue in every business. Really, you do have one, even if you don't think you do, because even if you're in retail, you have recurring revenue. But today with us is Tim Calise. Tim is a versatile entrepreneur, investor, a consultant, and even a podcast host also, who helps service-based business owners uncover the profits hidden inside their existing business. By the age of 25, Tim had raised over $325 million for an investment company before moving on to building a seven-figure tech-enabled fitness business alongside his wife. Most recently, Tim was one of the 4 executive team members at Gym Launch alongside Alex and Leela. He oversaw the development and launch of Alan, a machine learning SaaS company, which grew from 0 to 20 million annual recurring revenue in just 6 months. Currently, Tim helps make founders' dreams come true by implementing his product to profit trademark framework as a sought after #2 ambitious founders. Tim, it is great to have you on the podcast. Welcome today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Gary. I'm pleased to be here.
Well, anybody who wants to talk about recurring revenue, I love talking to them because back in my former days, Tim, I was in the wireless business, but I got into it when it was the mobile phone business, and we had a monthly recurring revenue by every client we signed up. And those were some good old days that we were able to grow that. And we was always told, you know, you keep growing that over the years, that's really going to expand and grow. And I was in the industry for 22 years, and it definitely did that for me. So I love recurring revenue models.
I love it. So it's where I've kind of been in service and technology for the better part of 20 years. And so I fundamentally believe that one of the challenges that we as business owners face is acquiring the customer. It sounds very simple, but if you think about different pricing models and different business models, the one-time sale requires you to continue to acquire more customers. When you have recurring revenue, you can build trust and monetize that relationship in a positive, authentic way. And I think as business owners, it causes us to have to focus on being very clear and deliberate at each step, which makes us better operators.
Yes. And I tell you, I think the thing is, a lot of small business owners don't think they can do that. They don't realize there's ways to create models that you can create that recurring revenue there. So if you're one of those business owners and you don't have that today, listen, because we're going to share some of Tim's experience and things that he's done that's really going to help there. And I'm going to start there because I think I wanted to set that up with the recurring revenue because you talked about it as the problem. But how did you kind of experience in raising this 325 million for your investment company that kind of really shape your approach to business, especially when you're thinking about helping service business owner uncover those hidden profits that they need to find in their business?
Yeah, so I started my career in the investment management business. So we were raising money to go out and invest in US stocks and things like that. And at the time, I wouldn't have thought it was a recurring revenue model. Above and beyond, we raised some capital and we earned some fees along the way. But for what we were able to find our unique selling proposition in that business, and I can go into that further if necessary. But what we found was we were able to take people gave us small allocations of money to manage. And as we did a better job and delivered on the promises that we made, they came back and gave us more. And so not only did we make the fees over time on the first investment or the first kind of set of money, they came back and we earned the right to deepen the relationship. And as we moved into fitness is a great example of a recurring revenue model. And we were able to optimize in a similar fashion, ways to continue to get someone to go deeper and deeper with us and monetize that relationship to the benefit and the profits of the business.
So I hope you heard what Tim just said. You have the client, maybe that retail client at first, that first time they do a transaction with you. What you've got to think about as a business owner, how can you take that deeper? Well, number one, you have to take care of the first thing that they set you up for. Because if you didn't do a good job with the investment, they wouldn't have came back and allowed you to do more money. So we have to think
Yeah.
about that. How can we go deeper in that area? And I think maybe we can uncover some of this because you all were very successful with the gym membership, like you talked about, and creating annual recurring revenue there. So can you share some of those insights on building that seven figure? And you were kind of tech enabled, right, in the fitness business alongside your wife. And how did that kind of really contribute to some of your business development and your philosophies?
Yeah, so take fitness as an interesting example because it's one of those things that you have to do effectively with consistency. Nobody can come, you can't join a gym and say, I'm going to get to my ideal weight and stay there forever. It just doesn't happen. And because of that, it has both positives and negatives. The positive being if you earn the trust of the customer and the client, you can keep that member for a very long period of time, so long as you can continue to deliver upon the promise. The challenge, though, is what is the milestone that you can use to attract that person? Because we can't say, come join my gym and I can promise you you'll lose 100 pounds in 5 years. That's not a good enough hook. So the question is, what can we deliver with a sufficient amount of confidence that is enough to bring somebody in for that first experience? And so both in our gyms and then at Gym Launch alongside Alex and Layla Hormozy, what we did was a 6-week transformation challenge. And the idea was, I can't deliver forever for you, but yeah, we can really move the needle in 6 weeks. And most people can do just about anything for 6 weeks. And the other part of that was critical for those that have ever been in the fitness industry or even had a gym membership, the industry is driven by a free session, a free day, free experience. We charge $600 for 6 weeks.
Wow.
And everyone thought we were crazy. But if you actually dig down, what that allowed us to do was to acquire customers at a profit and have enough resources to deliver a high level experience. So now you've joined a gym, you've had this amazing experience. So of course, when you see what that's like, do you want to continue having a great experience? Of course. And I think so many of us can take this into our businesses, which is, are you showing the prospect the best version of yourself? Are you giving your business the chance to authentically earn the trust of a prospect? And if you are not, I would encourage you to think about, how do you show your best stuff before they have to pay $1? And the best businesses in the world today are earning that trust on the front end and then monetizing it and delivering upon it over time.
As we continue, we're going to share more about this recurring revenue model. We'll be right back. And now back to the show. Well, Tim, I love what you said there because you talked about two things. Number one, you didn't acquire the client with a discount. You acquired them with profit. and
Yeah.
with really a little bit of extra. So what you talked about there with this high level of experience. So I know we have service-based business that's in this, and I understand fitness is definitely a service-based business too. But can you help me take that for the plumber or the electrician or any other type of service, lawn care? How can I think about that to be able to acquire them and then give that level of experience, or maybe even just share some of your examples that may get their brain going in their business?
Yeah, great question. And so how I think about this, and might be kind of breaking a belief you might hold if you're listening to this. We start high ticket and work backwards,
Mm,
whereas many service businesses start low ticket and then try to upsell. And this fundamentally changes the economics, because by going high ticket, what the question we are answering for ourselves is, if resources weren't an issue or weren't a factor, how would I do this to the greatest extent of my ability? So if you're a plumber, I actually have a client right now who's in the roofing space. You can say, well, do I want to be the cheapest guy? And you can say, probably not. So how can I be a higher level provider? You might include a guarantee. You might include a follow-up service. You might include additional products. So there are other things, and we think about this, we call this kind of using micro products, or a product stack to help deliver higher perceived value. So the way to think about this is, take the person you want to help and where they want to go in an ideal scene, in an ideal case, and deliver upon that. And by charging more in service, price is a perception of value. We are not buying a commodity. So if you were, I use this analogy quite a bit. If you needed surgery and you had a surgeon that charged $500 an hour and one that charged $10,000 an hour, which one do you think would be more valuable, right? And the numbers bear this out. Somewhere between 5 and 10% of your buyers want the highest tier thing that you offer. So make sure you have a way for them to go and purchase that with you. If you don't have an offering, find your lowest priced offer and 10x it, and you should have an offering that fits that price point, because you will sell it.
well, I love it because it changes your where you set yourself in the marketplace. You
100%.
set yourself number one up as high tier, but part of it is, let's be honest, business owners, because some of you saying, well, that's great, but that won't work in my industry. I know right away, I know what people think. I just have this feeling they're saying that. But the difference is what has to shift. Your mindset has to shift, because you've always been about, well, I'm about where everybody else is. So now you make that shift and you become the high ticket. We're in second quarter. I know a lot of people are cutting grass now. So if you think about lawn care, you've talked about plumber, different ones that we can look at, a roofer that's there, but also you think about your lawn care. Most people you call, what do? They come and they do your lawn. The only problem is, I don't know about you, but Tim, I have someone that takes care of my spraying. I have
Mm-hmm.
someone takes care of my lawn, yes, the cutting and stuff on that side of it. But then what else could be there? In the fall, it could be cleaning out my leaves and my gutters that's available, or blowing my leaves, because I've got a heck of a lot of trees. And this fall, I had to cover a lot of those. So it's thinking about that high ticket. What could you offer? And maybe instead of being so specialized only in one thing, you have a bundle of services that go with that, and you just make it easy, because I don't know about you, but it's a heck of a lot easier calling one person than calling three.
Yeah, Gary, you are exactly right. And here is the kind of twist, if this is resonating with you, that I would add. You as a homeowner, you didn't want your grass cut and you didn't want the leaves moved.
Hmm.
What you wanted was the picture perfect front yard. You wanted the person to drive by and say, you know what? Gary's house always looks immaculate. That's actually what you wanted. So if I came up to your door, I wouldn't say, Gary, let me cut your lawn. I would say, Gary, you strike me as the kind of guy who takes pride in your home. I want to be the guy to make sure that your neighbors are jealous of your hedges, of your lawn. I want everyone around in town to say, you know what? Every time I drive by Gary's house, I could eat off the front lawn. That's me. You don't have to do a thing. I'll take care of it for you. And by doing that, and you become the trusted confidant, if you will, it also opens up what we call the number of wallets that we have access to. If I said, I'm going to cut your lawn, I'm in the lawn cutting wallet. If I'm in the, I'm going to keep your house immaculate, I'm in the lawn cutting and the trees and the hedges and the winterization and the sprinklers, et cetera, et cetera. And you now have the inside track to either do it yourself in-house or find some other people who can help you deliver that service. But you're the guy.
Yeah. And just think, you don't have to have as many customers.
Oh, exactly right. Because we want profits.
Yeah.
So let's not work harder, let's work smarter. And at the end of the day, there's that mailbox money is something I think we could all be appreciative of over time.
Yeah. And that's the thing, a whole thing. And I loved about what Tim's sharing with us, because he's trying to get us to think differently in our business, because a lot of people think price only. So he's told you his big offer is his high ticket offer. That's where they start. They start at the top and they come down, versus the opposite. And just think, for sales wise, it's so much easier selling a ticket at that, because if someone has interest in that, then you don't have to keep selling down. You're selling at that level that's there. So I'm kind of curious, because as I did a little bit of research, Tim, and I'm sure we've talked a little bit around it, but you were one of those executive team members with this gym launch, overseeing kind of the development and launch of Allen. So can you kind of elaborate on some of the challenges you saw, but also you all were very successful in what you did, so people can kind of see that bigger picture?
Yeah. So Allen was a piece of software that helped take an online lead and get more of those people into a sales appointment. That was the problem that it solved. And we were able to grow it so efficiently because of two things. One is we did it off of the backs of and in combination with affiliates and partners. So instead of going and trying to sell ones and twos here and there, to use the analogy of the fishing pole, we went out and fished with a net. We went and found marketing agencies and other providers who had our core customer. We partnered with them and they brought the customer. So we were able to grow that business very, very quickly. The second is we delivered on the goal and the value that ultimately the customers wanted that no one else could provide. Everyone else was selling leads and selling nurturing services and things like that. And they did it as a cost plus model. Pay me a retainer, $1,000, $2,000 a month, plus we'll spend some money on Facebook ads. That was the offer at the time. We said, don't pay us a penny, but every time somebody shows up for a sales appointment, pay me $100. I'll take all the risk, because ultimately you don't need more leads. You need more shows. You need more times at bat. And we just said, we reduce the risk of our client to be able to give them exactly what they wanted, not what they were asking for. And that was how we were able to grow that business. And software is one of the great leverage products and opportunities. It's one of the few high margin opportunities out there. And in services, there's a few others which you can talk about. But I would not. I would look at your process and think about, how can I get as close to the value as possible for the customers that I'm trying to solve problems for.
Well, and I don't want people to think, okay, technology, we were talking about that, oh, that works different, but let's put it in the context of the small business side, and we'll break that down. Tim's done a good job of that so far, but let's do that. Let's use our example and stuff. One thing you talked about is affiliates and partners. Well, let's go back to the lawn care example and stuff. Who could be some of those affiliates and partners? Number one, there's probably certain subdivisions that have, someone in there, real estate agents. It could be an area that's being sold, a brand new development. You could go in and that could become an affiliated partner. Real estate agents, of course, can become those partners, because they're moving into new areas. Most people don't know who to call. So you can be that service provider there. So when we look at it, then now it's about the value. What value can you bring? And maybe instead, where they give you a lead, it's their lead, you're willing to pay them or give them a referral, or maybe it's not you pay them, but you take care of their lawn. And that's part of their payment of getting that. Now, they have to have so many, but they get discounted off by how many people they send to you. So it's thinking differently in your business, whatever it is. It may be some online leads. I love that, because what that did, you said, we have to provide. If we don't provide, you don't pay us anything. But it showed with your system, you was able to provide because you was able to get that annual recurring revenue that's there. But in your business, once you get them, then it's your job to figure out how do I do multiple services to go after the high ticket sale. And you don't go after the person that's renting a place, because
Yeah.
lawn care, that's normally taken care of. So you're going after
Yeah.
the right style of people and stuff. So Tim, just some great concepts, and I love what you're sharing and stuff. And I'm going to kind of leave the last part of it as we're starting to wrap up and stuff, but I really don't have a question. But what would you want to share with those business owners that they're out there struggling and stuff and going through it? What would be some of their first steps that you would tell them to kind of start moving forward to thinking about their business?
Yeah. So first, from a belief perspective,
Hmm.
people hire you not for what you do, but for who you are. And that sounds like a bumper sticker, but what it means to me is we so often get wrapped around what is the tactics, what are we actually doing? And we lose sight of what is it that it means to the customer. So for example, take lawn care. It's I cut lawns, I trim trees, I things like that. But that's actually not what you provide. What you provide for the husband who might be, getting an earful of, why don't you cut the grass? Why don't you cut the grass? It might be for the parents who are working two jobs, who are cutting the grass on the weekends, and that hard-earned time, instead of being spent cutting the grass, can be spent with an experience with their kids. You're delivering quality of life. And so I encourage you to pull back a little bit and say, by being in the marketplace, what is that enabling my customer? What does it mean to them in their core? And then have a couple of different ways for someone to participate to go deeper with you. An entry level, a mid level, and a high ticket, as an example, so that you can make sure that you're taking care of each person in a way that is unique to them.
Yeah, I think that's the key. And think about some bundling of service, when we talk about high ticket, how can I get a higher ticket, but then it takes care of that for that individual for other areas, and realizing you can still have others. And Tim just said that, you will have a high ticket, kind of a mid-level, and a low ticket that's there. But the thing is, don't get in the habit of starting with the low ticket. Start
Yeah.
with the higher ticket. I've heard that multiple times because it's easier. And I've heard people say a lot of times is the middle one is what most people end up taking, but that's where their sweet spot is too, where they have the most margin built in a lot of times that's available to you. So I loved what you talked about is the belief, because the thing that has to change is for most business owners is we're just trying to get by because we've got to be in this same price range as everyone else. And what we've talked about is you've got to change that belief, that mindset that's there, and say, I don't have to always be the lowest. And what it does, it takes less customers. And I've had people on before where we talk about profit. And, if you raise your prices 10%, people think, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose so many customers. And ended up, you lose a small percentage of those. And actually, you end up making more money because you've reduced that. Tim, what a great conversation. I appreciate you being on. His website is timcalise.com. We'll have it in there on show notes, so please check that out. He's on LinkedIn. We're going to have that link there that you can connect with him. If you have some questions, I'm sure you're willing to take some questions to be able, because we can't cover it all in the podcast, but I think we've got our business owners really thinking in those areas. So I appreciate you coming on. Now, I ask every guest this question, and I want to make sure I get it here for you because you've given such great information already. But what would be your best advice you would give the business owners?
So for me, the core of this is how can I be of service to other folks in the greatest extent possible? And so often, and we've spoken about it today, we try to go to the level where everyone will say yes. And I would encourage you to continue to push the envelope within yourself and within the business, and figuring out combinations that can differentiate you, but as well as deliver upon the great the the belief that your customer has and where they can go. So if you can be a belief breaker and a deliverer of value, you will build a nice recurring revenue business for yourself.
That's wonderful. Tim Calise, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Gary. Appreciate it very much.
I always like to give you one action. I'm going to give you the one action. And Tim said it at the end, and he said it before, and we talked about this multiple times. You have to believe. Because I know right now some of you have a self-limiting belief that you're saying, no, I can't raise my prices. No, I can't do a high ticket. That's you. Decide to try it. And even if you have to, try it on half of the people and stuff. But try it and put together an offer and then start offering it. That's the only way you're going to make it happen. But you have to believe first, because you're never going to convince your customer. Because if you say, oh, I've got this low price, you're going to have to make that offer. So put together an offer and start with a high ticket value offer. That's my challenge to you. I hope it works. This is some great information that Tim shared. So please, if you like this podcast, share it with others. That's how we grow our podcast. Or go on and give us a rating and review. Our podcast keeps growing every month because of people like you, because we're trying to help small business owners. We know what a challenge it is to be a small business owner, and we want to really grow those small business owners, because that's what makes our economy and makes our country great. So check out timcalise.com or check him out on LinkedIn. All the information will be in show notes. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back next week with another great guest. Thanks for joining us.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.